Raging protesters from different transportation groups are storming the streets, decrying the recent issuance of the Joint Administrative Order 2014-01 by the Department of Transportation and Communication, Land Transportation Office, and Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board. The said Joint Administrative Order, issued on June 2, sets higher fines and penalties for various violations of land transportation rules and regulations. The said penalties under the order against colorum vehicles are pegged at 1 million pesos for buses, 200,000 for trucks, 50,000 pesos for jeepneys, 200,000 for vans, 120,000 pesos for taxis, and 6,000 pesos for tricycles for first offenses. Violators' colorum vehicles will also be impounded for 3 months, and the public utility vehicles shall be blacklisted. It took effect last June 19th, threatening the operation of illegal or unauthorized PUVs. A petition seeking to halt its implementation had been lodged at the Supreme Court, but the High Court refrained from issuing a temporary restraining order. The Joint Transportation Order tries to solve the growing number of transportation violations that appear to worsen the past 2 years. Thus, the DOTC stood firm on its order, imposing stiffer penalties for transport violators, including colorum buses, despite protest actions by some transport groups. Welcome to Opposing Views, a hard, straightforward discussion of today's most pressing issues. Transportation plays a vital role in the development of our economy, contributes to employment generation, and has a crucial role in tourism. In fact, transportation contributes 3.1% to our country's gross domestic product. The recent Joint Administrative Order of the DOTC aims to police transportation violators through stiffer penalties, but transportation groups are not convinced. So our question for tonight: is the DOTC's Joint Administrative Order imposing stricter penalties for various land transportation violations justified? Good evening, I'm Rod Nepomuceno, and this is Opposing Views. Joining us tonight in our discussion is Mr. Jason Salvador, spokesperson of the Land Transportation Office. Jason, good evening. Nice to see you again.
Good evening, sir. It's nice to be back.
Legal Help Desk and to discuss the anti-drunk driving. No?
Yes.
So thank you for once again joining us.
It's always a pleasure, sir.
Yeah. Give us a summary of your position on this about the JAO, the Joint Administrative Order.
Our point here is simple. We just want order and discipline on the roads. You and I know that our roads are very chaotic. Traffics left and right, accidents left and right, violators left and right, which makes it pretty hard for even ordinary motorists to traverse the roads. Yeah. So with the JAO, we just want to implement order and hopefully discipline so that ultimately we could save lives.
All right. Now on the opposing side naman is Ms. Zenny Maranan, President of the FEDUDAP. Ma'am Zenny, good evening.
Good evening, Rod.
Thanks for joining us tonight. What are your thoughts on this? A quick summary of your position on the JAO, the Joint Administrative Order, ma'am.
We oppose the job because tinututulan po namin ang job na itigil muna lang implementasyon, Rod, kasi marami silang provision na ginawa na hindi tama para sa amin.
All right.
Talon-talo kami ang mga tsuper pagkat ang operator at tsuper ay talon-talo dito. At bagamat sinagot na kami ng LTFRB na kanila itong babaguhin, pero ang gusto namin ay yung black and white. Pagkat sa kasalukuyan ay patuloy na ginagawa na nila ang panghuhuli. So kung walang black and white na papel, na nakikita namin talagang babaguhin nila ito, kawawa ang tsuper, operator, na sabihin na natin, excuse me sa words, na wala silang kalamanan. Hindi nila alam na ganito pala yung mangyayari. Pagkat itong ginawa nilang JAO na ito ay isang public consultation lang ang ginawa nila sa amin. Ang sinabi sa amin, itong gagawin, itong ibibigay, inoppose namin sa lahat, sa buong Pilipinas na pinuntahan nilang mga region na grupo namin, ino-oppose ito, pinapaliwanag. Pero anong ginawa nila? In-implement kagad.
Alright. Okay, let's start the discussion. Again, the whole point of this debate is so that all the facts can be put together and discussed, and so that our viewers can form their own opinion. So let's start off with you, Jason. Now, you mentioned it, no? The roads are quite chaotic, maraming aksidente, and I'm a driver myself. I drive around, and I sometimes find myself really complaining in my head, no, about this bus or this jeep stopping here or just cutting me, no. So I understand it, but is there really a need for a stricter, I guess, rule, no, transportation rule, to the point that it's almost like, according to the FEDUDAP and other organizations, it's almost absurd?
Well, there is. According to our studies, we've seen that there are a lot of recidivist violators, meaning they just violate or disregard the laws, the rules every single time. I mean, they just don't learn their lessons. So we thought about, a stricter rule with a higher penalty so that it could strike fear, that a driver would have second, third thoughts about violating it.
It is something like Singapore, for example, where,
Yes.
Obviously when you
Well,
violate the law there, it's really very strict.
It's all about discipline, and you can only have discipline if you have stiffer penalties.
Okay. Now, can't you motivate them more positively rather than imposing
Well,
such
this is
stricter-
just one part of the program. There are a lot of factors in the program, like the licensing factor, the registration factor. But at the end of the day, what we want to have is order, and you cannot really have order if they don't follow the rules.
Okay. Ma'am Zenny, ang point ng LTO is order nga, no? And I guess the rationale nga, as mentioned by Jason, is the stricter the penalty, mas matatakot sila to violate it, and thus they'll be more careful and they will make sure that they will follow the
Para
law.
sa amin, Rod, hindi ako naniniwala dyan.
Bakit naman, ma'am?
Bagkat hindi ako naniniwala na sa taas ng penalty na ibibigay ay madidisiplina mo ang tsuper. Ang kailangan una natin disiplinahin dito yung mga enforcer.
Okay.
Sapagkat kung
another
talagang
topic
ginagawa nila ang kanilang katungkulan, talagay ko ang driver ay hindi pwedeng hindi susunod sa kanila at makikinig.
Okay.
Kasi karamihan linalahat na namin to, I hope hindi magtampo si sir, no? Hindi ka magtampo.
Hindi naman
Pero
mo-
ito
hindi
yung
naman sensitive,
katotohanan.
Jason.
Pagkat wala kayo sa ibaba, nasa itaas kayo. Ngayon na lang kayo bumababa. Pero kami, nakikita namin ng mga enforcer nyo, sinasabi na naming mali sila, ayaw nila kaming pakinggan, tikit ang inaano namin, tinatakot nila sa amin, pinapanakot nila. Pag hindi kami nagbigay, kaya kami tinatakot because gusto nila ng kotong. Yun naman ang totoo nun Bato-bato sa langit, wag magalit ang tatamaan nito. Totoo naman na talaga ang karamihan sa mga enforcer, mapa LTO, mga traffic bureau o highway patrol, ang target nila ng paghawak ng panikit ay ang para kutongan ang hanay ng transport. Kami na ang nakikita naming milking cow nila na ginagawa nila. Hindi to discipline the driver and the operator, but to kotong. Yun ang target nila. Kaya kung talagang sila'y magtatrabaho lang, tignan mo na lang yan, napakalit na batas. Mag-uniforme ka. Kami, pinag-uniforme namin ng mga tsuper. Inuutos namin as a leader. Talagang pinasusunod namin. Nagbibigay pa nga kami ng mga t-shirt para sila ay may uniforme. Anong ginagawa ng isang enforcer? Salagang, kung ang huli mo, ang multa mo ng uniform, ng no uniform ay 150, 50 centimos kumakagat ang enforcer. Hindi ka titikitan. Ini-ignore nila yan.
No, pero Ma'am Zenny, do you agree or not, no, in this premise na talagang nag-worsen ang mga violations? Okay, let's have the enforcers. We'll discuss the enforcers mamaya-maya, no? Pero will you agree with me na nag-worsen yung mga violations na ginagawa ng mga drivers, no? Kasama na yung mga private and of course public transportation drivers.
Pero
will you agree with me na nag-worsen, lalong lumala ang violations?
Bakit nga lumalala? Dahil, bagamat sabi mo nga, iwalay natin ang enforcer. Sila naman talaga may kasalanan Konting kasalanan na pwedeng pagbigyan. Basta inopera mo ng pera, tapos na yan. Kahit na mali, nakikita na nilang mali. Example ko, like sa yung biyahe na Novaliches, Blooming Treat, going to Blooming Treat.
Okay.
maraming ang jaw na tinatawag dyan, yung mga batang nakasando, naka-short, na marumi, sasampa sa jeep. Nakasabit ngayon yan. Anong gagawin ng isang may panikit ng LTO? Huhulihin mo. Dahil nakasabit bawal yun Pero sana, tignan mo naman, imbis na yung driver ang hulihin mo, dahil kami, sinasabi talaga ng driver. Isang opisyalis ko ng FEDUDAP, na pinara ang sasakyan niya at pinabababa niya yung batang jaw na yung batang badyaw na tinatawag natin. Anong ginawa? Bumaba, dinuran yung driver. Bakit? Bagamat hindi hawak, LTO na mismo, sir. Bagamat hindi nyo hawak ang hulihin yung mga ganyang klase dahil kayo ay para sa mga prangkisa, sa mga penang prangkisa ang tinutumbok nyo. Sana, damputin nyo ito at dalhin nyo sa tamang kinaukulang ahensya. Pagkat para matigil ito. Nagrireklamo na kami.
Okay.
Sinasabi na namin. Dahil kaya namin sinasabi, tinitikitan kami. Imagine mo naman, pag nahuli ka may nakasabit sa jeep, magkano multa namin? 1,000?
Okay, Ma'am Zenny, sandali lang. So, Jason, I'll give you an opportunity. So, the position of Zenny is that it's really the fault of the enforcers kasi hindi nyo nga in-enforce, so therefore, they'll do whatever they can get away with it.
Well, I honestly don't believe in that. If there's nothing wrong with the way you're driving and there's nothing wrong with your vehicle, basically, then there's no reason for the enforcers to flag you down in the first place. So if there's any attempt to extort or to abuse, you can certainly report that to us, and then we'll immediately take action against that person. So it's not about that.
You take it seriously, no? Kunyari,
Yes,
I'll
we
get
do.
your name. I'll get your name.
We
Kunyari,
get
may
your name
nag-extort,
if there's probable cause, and then we can prove that he's really trying to extort money or abuse the driver.
But
then,
that's a situation where parang their word against your officer's word, di ba?
That's true. That's true.
So how does I mean, it's nice to hear. I mean, in an ideal world, it's great. Kaya lang, paano yun? Kunyari, I'm gonna text, I'm gonna call, si Officer De La Cruz,
well, that's why we encourage people to be vigilant. Even if you're not the driver, if you notice somebody being flagged down, take pictures, take videos, so that you can have evidence to submit to us that if there's any extortion going on. The bottom line here, Sir Rod, is that if you are not going to violate anything, there's nothing to fear about whether the fines are high or not. But if you just follow the rules, then everything will be okay.
You'll be fine. But do you agree? I'll ask the same question to Ma'am Zenny that I asked Ma'am Zenny earlier. Do you believe that the violations have worsened to the point that it justifies an increase in penalties that is sometimes 5, 6, 7, or 10 times higher than the old penalties?
Well, yes, we do have statistics to back that up. We didn't arrive at these numbers just on a whim, We've studied this carefully and we've made calculations so that it would be just the appropriate amount in the certain violations.
Okay, I wanted to talk about that, the rationalization of these penalties. However, we need to take a short break. Meanwhile, you can react online via Facebook at facebook.com/SolarOpposingViews or tweet your comments at opposing_views. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Don't go away. Welcome back. You're still watching Opposing Views on the Solar News Channel. We have with us Mr. Jason Salvador, spokesperson of the LTO, and Ms. Zenny Maranan, president of the FEDUDAP. Our debate question for tonight is the DOTC's joint administrative order imposing stricter penalties for various land transportation violations justified. Now, Ma'am Zenny, do you admit your people bribe these enforcers? Kasi yung na-mention nga ni Jason, meron talagang nagsusuhol din. Na-mention nyo rin kanina. So if that's the case kasi, kung nagagaling yung offer muna sa driver, okay.
May oras na, mahirap namang magkakaila ka. May oras na, may driver na talagang nagsisimula sa kanya, siguro, dahil may kasalanan siya. Pero,
so meron mga
kung may
drivers.
kasalanan,
Pero may mga drivers na gano'n.
Mahirap namang sabihin natin na puro yung enforcer na lamang, di ba? Pero, masigit na mas marami ang kasalanan ng enforcer. Kasi sila talaga yung malayo pa lamang pinapaalam na nila manghuhuli na kami. Yung mga hawak nila mga kolorum. Hindi kami kontra sa kolorum. Kahit anong laki
Hindi
ng...
kayo kontra sa kolorum?
Hindi kami kontra. Mas gusto namin hulihin ang mga kolorum.
Okay.
Pagkat yan ang umaagaw ng kita ng mga may lehitimong prangkisa.
Okay.
Pero, di ba, tinaasan nung araw, ang multa lang ng kolorum at out of line ay 1,500. Pinag-isipan ng LTO at saka ng MMDA, ginawan 6,000 para matanggal ang kolorum. Nangyari ba? Hindi. Dumami. 6,000, naglalagay kami ng 3,000. Kaya ako nasasabi, na-experience ng mga ibang mga tao na lumalapit sa amin na ayoko naman tulungan pagkat kolorum sila. Talagang nagbibigay sila ng 3,000, nakikita namin. At mismo ang mga enforcer ng araw, Seni, pwede ba ituro mo sa amin kung sino ang mga kolorum dyan, kung sino yung mga ano, tinuturo namin dahil gusto namin matanggal. Nahuli, na-impound, pagkaraan ng 2 araw, labas, susunod, lalabas na uli. Bakit hindi hinuhuli? May lagayan na ng lingguhan.
Itong 6,000 na to, it's for jeepneys?
For the jeepney. For everybody
General.
nun. Di ba?
General.
Bus.
That was before. No?
Yeah.
No, all right. So you're saying nga na yung suhol or let's say yung extortion or the exchange of money nga, the illegal exchange of money, yung unang offer nanggagaling sa enforcer. That's what you're
Yes.
saying. Kaya napaperpetuate yung problema.
May mga kapulisyahan, wag naman silang ma-open sa akin. Meron yung iba retired, meron yung iba may trabaho, nagtatrabaho pa rin ngayon. Nagpapasok sila sa amin ng jeep, lalo na yung retired. Pwede ba pasok ko ang jeep ko, walang prangkisa? Kikibo kami? Ayaw namin. Kikibo ba kami? Pagka kami kumibo at tumanggi, pahuhuli kami sa mga kaibigan nila. Titikitan kami ng titikitan, hinuhuli kami ng hinuhuli. O, sino ngayon ang talagang humahawak? Sino ba ang protector ng kolorum? Sino ba ang protector ng mga out of line? Huwag naman ma-open. Hindi ko sinasabi si Jason pagkat hindi yan ang huhuli.
Mukhang mabait naman si Jason.
Napabanggit ko
Jason,
LTO.
anong posisyon natin sa LTO?
For one thing, I would like to agree kay Ate Seni, no? Talaga namang huhulihin mo, lalabas. Huhulihin mo ngayon, lalabas. Bakit? Kasi ang mura eh. They would, kayang-kaya nilang i-risk yun eh, na mahuli ako, maglalagay lang ako or whatever, I'll pay the fine. Tomorrow, lalabas ako, biyahe na naman. I'll risk eh.
They'll pay half the fine.
Yeah.
So now, you've increased nga the
1 million,
penalties.
for example, sa buses.
Pero yun nga, from 6,000 to 1 million is kind of
Well,
it's kind of wild. No?
the
How did
numbers are big,
You were
really.
mentioning
Well,
earlier, you came up with the
Here's how we
rationalization.
arrived at the figure. We figured that, for example, how much does a brand new bus cost? So around 5 million to 6 million to 7 million. We pegged the penalty at least to the 20%.
Of the
Or
bus.
normally, if you buy a vehicle, you would pay 20% as down and then you would get the vehicle. So that is pegged on the down payment for such vehicles. From the bus to the trucks to the AUVs, taxis, and down to the motorcycle. That's why it was pegged that way. Anyway, as I was saying, I would agree, lalabas nga sila ng lalabas kasi nga, they can risk it. I'll give you an example on how effective this is. Just before we were going to implement the new ZAO, a major store chain called me up saying that I have a problem. This is a major store chain. I have a problem. Sabi ko, sir, anong problema nyo? Ayaw na ako deliveran ng mga truck ko. Sabi ko, bakit po? Kasi natatakot silang biyahe dahil definitely mahuhuli silang kolorum dahil kolorum sila. Whereas before, wala lang silang pakialam, deliver lang deliver. So what happened was, napilitan sila mag-legit. And that's what we want. We just want to regulate it. We want put order. So talagang naayos. Ngayon, ang LTFRB, they're doing their part. They're accepting applications so that all these people would go legit.
On the side, how much ba to register, let's say, a bus? Is it that expensive that they will risk?
No, it's not
having
that
a
hard,
forum?
but the franchises are not readily available because up to this point, may moratorium
Alright,
on the issuance. But the thing is, they just can't fly those routes kasi una-una, yun nga, nawawalan ng kita yung mga legitimate. Pangalawa, it's causing chaos. You're not supposed to be there, you're adding up to the traffic. Plus, ang masakit dito, hindi protektado yung mga mananakay. Look, for example, what happened to Florida, if you would remember a few months back, probably in December. The Florida bus got into a very, very bad accident. People died. And they were not covered by an insurance because hindi sila lehitimo. Sinong kawawa? Yung mga pasahero.
Now, do you think this is a matter of just implementation? Could you have retained the penalties before and just had a stricter implementation and maybe had stiffer penalties for enforcers who maybe, bribing, nagsusuhol nga?
Well, it's not just we need more teeth. We need more teeth in the law and in the policy because, as you can see, they just get away with it. I mean,
Yeah.
huli ngayon, labas bukas.
Yeah. Is there any, yeah.
Pero ako naman, Jason, Rod, hindi naman siguro kailangan lakihan masyado yung multe. Kung
Yeah,
kayong
yun yung
mga
next question ko,
nanghuhuli, like the LTO, na nanghuhuli, kung alam niyong kolorum yan, in-impound nyo, bakit nyo pinalalabas? Huwag nyo palabasin. Hindi naman kailangan itaas ang ang fines eh.
Well, you can
Huwag niyo
hold on to
palabasin.
it forever. So, may mga days lang yan.
Kasi-
so, when they pay the fine, after a certain period of time, you have to let them go. Because, you can't own the vehicle. Hindi mo siya pwedeng stay doon. But ngayon, Ma'am Senny, I would just like to share this. We've been implementing this for a week or more. It's very effective. I mean,
Pero
nawala
ang-
sila lahat sa kalye.
Ang tanong ko, sige, nakahuli kayo ngayon ng 10, 20 kolorum, like the buses. Hanggang gano'n lang ba tayo?
Well-
Dapat kung talagang nandyan yung implementation na hindi yung kayo yung talagang nandyan eh. Ano yung mga binibigyan nyo ng karapatan na manguli ng may panikit? Ako, naniniwala ko, LTFRB, Jason, nandiyan kayo, nakatayo kayo, naniniwala ako, you will do your duty. Pero, pag hindi na kayo ang nakatayo, mga tao na ninyo ang nakatayo na mga dineputize nyo, alam na-deputize mo highway patrol, o kung sino man yung dineputize mo, do you think gagawin nila
Well,
yun?
naintindihan natin yun.
Doon papasok yung graft and corruption na sinasabi. Habang lumalaki ang multa, lumalaki ang lagay na hinihingi ng isang enforcer. Kasi dapat i-disiplina rin natin talaga sila.
That's true.
Pero
That's
yung
true.
sinasabi nyo na isumbong namin,
Yeah,
we've done it.
You've done it.
Nung araw, ginawa na namin yan.
May
Sa
pangalan.
Krami,
May mga pangalan and
yes,
gano'n.
sinasabi na namin. And even if you remember, Rod, nagkaroon kami ng parang tigil pasada sa Maynila, no? Remember? Isinisigaw ko na kung sino ang mga pulis na talagang salbahe.
Jason,
May ginawa ba sila? Wala.
Natatanggap niyo ba yung mga reports na yun,
Yes.
yung mga names na yun?
Ina-action na yan.
Do they get
Ina-action
in-action
na
naman?
yan.
Na may
Ina-action
discipline?
na yan.
What kind of
Tatanggalin
disciplinary
yan.
action?
If it merits, tatanggalin talaga yan. We investigate.
Marami na
Pag
yan.
kinakailangan, isuspindi mo.
Okay,
Kung
now-
kinakailangan talaga.
Now, I just want to run through, no? For our viewers also, yung mga penalties, ma'am, maybe you can cite yung mga what you feel are yung very harsh. Mag-example kayo sa mga
Alam
may
mo,
listahan kayo.
may mga fines and penalties dito na okay naman, pero kung iisipin mo, like sabihin na natin itong overcharging or undercharging. Paano ngayon ang gagawin mo sa amin, Jason? Ang bayad ng senior citizen o ng estudyante na may discount is 680. Wala kaming isusukli. Ang ginagawa ngayon ng karamihan sa estudyante, karamihan, di ko linalahat, at matatandang senior citizen, iabot sa amin 650. That is undercharging. Ano naman ang penang ibibigay mo para doon sa mga nagbayad ng kulang sa amin? Kung
So,
kami naman ngayon ang hindi nagbigay ng sukli na 2 centimos, 20 centimos,
Nag-overcharge kayo.
overcharging yan. Uliin mo kami, pagmumultay mo kami 5,000, 10,000, hanggang 15,000, tapos cancellation of franchise, samantalang walang panukli talagang maigbigay. Anong gagawin mo?
Well,
Isang example lang yan, Jason, ha?
Yeah.
Kaya sinasabi ko nga, hindi namin tinututulan yung inyong pagnanais na ayusin natin ang ating mga katsupiran. Di ba, meron na nga lumabas na memorandum circular coming from, executive order coming from DOTC, yung ginawa ni Secretary Ping De Jesus, natatandaan mo? Magkaroon ng ang mga tsuper. Magkaroon tayo ng parang seminar na para maturuan natin sila, ituro natin ang tamang disiplina, ang tamang gawain ng isang tsuper, nakadamit, nakaayos, lahat ganito. Noong pa yung lumabas, ginawa ba nila? Gawa lang ng gawa ng executive order. Pero kulang naman sa implementasyon, kulang sa gawain. Tapos ngayon, pupukpukin nyo kami, bibilisan nyo kami, sisisihin nyo ang mga tsuper namin. Samantalang, kaya lang minsan nagiging irresponsible ang isang tsuper. Kapag kami ay tinikita ng walang kasalanan na nagkukumahog kami para madagdagan muli yung aming kikitain dahil kinolekta ng mga nanguhuli.
Okay, Jason, your thoughts on that?
Well, we go down to the basics again. Hindi kayo titikitan kung wala kayong kasalanan. Kung tinikitan kayo unfairly, isumbong nyo sa amin. Di ba? Tatanggalin natin yan.
Meron kayong isang provision na ginawa.
Yeah, there's a provision in parang you pay first before you
Pay
contest.
first before you contest.
Okay, alright.
Yun ang irinireklamo namin. Paano kung totoo? Totoo yung aming kinokontest. Paano namin kukunin ang pera sa gobyerno na pumasok na?
Well, there's a
Napakahirap
mechanism
ilabas
for
yan.
that.
Ano yung mechanism
May
na yan?
mechanism
Will it
naman
be-
for that lahat,
oh.
eh, no?
Of course, it will take time, di ba?
Yeah.
Very hard to get money from the government.
But the thing is, there's this thing that we're trying to solve also. Eh. When you apprehend the person, nagkakaroon din ng gray
debate.
area
Di
sa,
Ayaw.
sa adjudication. So that's the point
Yeah.
behind that. Eh. So,
Yeah.
di ba?
No,
As much as possible, what we're trying to eliminate here is the human intervention, as always in the bureaucracy. If you try as much as possible to eliminate the intervention part, then you would as much as possible eliminate red tape and corruption.
But you'll agree with me, no? Sometimes this happened to me, no? I turned left. I turned left at some point. I was trying to look for my left turn ba dito, or I wasn't so sure, but there was no sign. So I turned left. When I turned left, that's when I saw the sign. When I turned left,
Right.
I did see it. When you're in the intersection,
it's
you don't
too
see
late.
it. Yeah, and I was caught. And I complained. No, I justified it, and well, nakinig naman. No, I mean, but I would imagine someone who's driving 12 hours a day
Yeah.
will probably have more experiences of engaging a debate with your
With the
enforcers.
enforcer, yeah.
I'm listening to Jenny from a practical standpoint. Yun nga, yung overcharging and the undercharging and all that. How do you really implement that? How do you implement that?
Well, for the
5,000
undercharging-
gis lang or bed
Well, for the
mo?
undercharging, the
Paano kung
wisdom
examine ng tao?
behind that is that we protect the rights of the riding public. We just make sure that the PUVs or the public utility vehicles charge them correctly. With regards to the percentage, for example, that's the 680 thing. That's a monetary concern. We just need to ask the banks or the BSP to come up with more coins so that there would be available coins all circulating, so that there would be any problem. And also, going back to that point, since that's your industry, you have to make sure that you have,
dapat
you have
may-
enough
may-
change.
may-
Like,
kung
kunyari,
business
bibili ka sa tindahan. Pag hindi ka sinuklian, di ba, sasabihin mo, dapat may barya ka. That's your
negosyo mo yan,
responsibility. Di ba? So, if that's where you get your livelihood, you have to
You
take
have to
care of
change.
it.
Now, ma'am, what are the other penalties po? Ano pa yung mga
Katulad
ibang
na lamang
penalties
ng
na...
out of line.
Out of line,
Diba?
yes. Let's talk about
That
that.
is 50,000 sa panig ng mga jeepney.
So you get charged 50,000 kung out of line ka?
Hindi ko kinukontra yung 50,000 na yan eh.
Hindi nyo kinukontra?
Halimbawa lang ang prangkisa mong kinuha ng isang operator, isang handaan ni Visoria.
Oo.
Payag ako na magmulta yan ng 50,000 kung tumakbo siya sa Project 8. That's out of line.
Out of line siya. Oo.
How about yung ginagawa ng mga local government ngayon sa amin? Ito ang prangkisa namin sa Handaan de Visoria. Sa Handaan de Visoria, mayroon 200 units yan na may prangkisa. Kung lahat mula sa Handaan going to Ilaya de Visoria, pag ipinasok mo lahat yan sa Ilaya, ang traffic hanggang sa Handaan na. Walang tatakbong jeep. May darating pang ibang prangkisa, di ba? Ibang linya na darating dyan sa lugar ng Ilaya. Ang ginawa ng Manila, para maayos ang trapiko, irinirut kami. Hinati ang 200 unit na yan, hinati sa 3 lugar na dadaanan namin. Hindi naayos yan. Walang kaayusan sa LTFRB. Sinasabi na namin nung araw pa na ayusin nyo ito kasi rinirerute kami. Ang ginagawa ng nagre-route sa amin sa lugar ng Maynila, yung mga nanghuhuli na hindi alam na rinirute kami, kahit na ipinakikita namin yung papeles na katunayan rinirute kami, hindi nila pinapansin yan, hinuhuli kami, tinitikitan kami ng out of line.
So in other words, ang LGU ang nagpalit ng route nyo?
LGU. Dapat naman talaga, kung iisipin, ang lokal na, ang LGU at saka national, dapat merong communication yan eh.
So basically, ikaw, in principle, you're okay na yung 50,000 fine.
Kasi para madala rin, di ba?
But only kung
Pero-
may control ka. Kasi in this case, wala kang control kasi the
Pero
LGU
Rod,
is the
may
one.
magagawa ng paraan dyan para walang kumuha ng out of line. Kung tutusin mo. Sa pagbibigay mo pa lamang ng linya sa LTFRB, hindi po ako nagtuturo, ako'y nagbibigay lang ng suggestion. Bago mo bigyan ng prangkisa ang isang tao, tiyakin mo, tagaroon nga ba siya talaga sa kinukuha niyan prangkisa? Kasi nung araw, inopen ang franchise. Open for everybody. Kahit hindi ka taga Maynila, taga Quezon City ka, kukuha ka ng prangkisa para magkaroon ka lang ng dilaw na plaka, makatakbo ang sasakyan mo at mabuhay ka. Ganyan na nangyayari hanggang ngayon.
Now, how does that work, Jason?
The part where
with the LGUs, yeah.
Well, basically, the one who gives the franchise is the FRB. They decide the routes. They make a study before they issue those routes. That's what they call the route measurement capacity.
Yeah.
Before they issue that, they make a long study about it, and that's it. If LGUs should or intends to reroute them, they have to inform LTFRB because the basis of the route is on the franchise.
So there is a gap there. You admit there's a gap there somehow?
There's a gap there, but that's easily solvable. I mean, just
Because
a matter of communication.
pinapakita nila yung order from the LGU, pero
Alam mo,
hindi,
kaya kami-
pinapenalize pa rin sila eh.
Well, who's going to apprehend you? The LGU? They're the ones trying to reroute you.
No, well,
Alam mo ba
the
yung
police,
ginawa
I guess.
nyo ngayon ng pagtataas nito? Ang LGU gagawa na naman ng ordinansa para taasan yung ginawa nilang ibang presyo. Gagawin nilang, kung ito ay 50,000, baka gawin nilang 20,000.
Okay, Ma'am Zenny, sorry, I need to take a short break. We'll continue our conversation. So, again, we're discussing the DOTC's Joint Administrative Order 2014-01 when we come back. You're watching Opposing Views. Welcome back. You're still watching Opposing Views on the Southern News Channel. I'm Rod Nepomuceno. Still with us, Jason Salvador, LTO spokesperson, and Zenny Maranan, president of the FEDJADAP. Our question is the DOTC's Joint Administrative Order imposing stricter penalties for various land transportation violations justified. Now will you agree with me, Jason? The Philippine Chamber of Commerce, the PCCI, they've weighed in on this, on the JAO, and according to them, this joint administrative order will lead to shortage of trucks, aggravating the ill effects of congestion in the ports of Manila, and of course, increasing their costs. No? What do you say to that?
Well, we can understand their fears, but if I'm not mistaken, we met with the people from the truckers and from the ports this day. With the members of DOTC and other concerned areas. And I think they've trashed that out. So it's no longer a problem.
No longer a problem. Kasi they raised it that they were saying that because of higher truck rates nga, the container pileup. So is that being addressed already?
It has been addressed. I think they've agreed to some points, and then I don't think that the problem is
Ma'am,
there
you're aware po sa Philippine Chamber of Commerce, yung mga reklamo nila na, because of the new joint administrative order, tumataas yung truck rates nila and all that, and nagkakaroon na shortage of trucks. Are you aware of that issue ng Philippine Chamber of Commerce?
Medyo sa kasalukuyan.
Hindi masyado. Ang issue niyo pa rin talaga yung really the penalties.
Alin?
Ang issue niyo talaga is really more on the penalties.
Oo, ang issue namin talaga sa penalties. At saka, sobra kasi talagang taas. Para bang wag naman silang magagalit sa akin o magtatampo. Para bang gusto na nilang tanggalin lahat ng hanap buhay ng isang operator at ng isang driver. Kasi yung 5,000, kumikita nga lang sila ng 300 eh. Titikitan mo, tulihin mo at pagmumultahin mo ng 5,000.
Ano ba yung for our televiewers, no? Ano yung mga older penalties, no? For reference lang, kanina we were discussing this earlier. Ngayon 5,000 for example. Let's say magbigay ka ng one of the violations diyan. Kunyari walang plaka or walang
halimbawa, yung wala kang prangkisa,
wala
di ba?
franchise.
Pagka hindi, yung colorum na lang natin. Tumbukin natin dahil yung colorum out of line pinaparehas nyo di ba? Dapat may pagkakaiba yun Hindi pareho yun kung tutuusin
Yung walang prangkisa at saka colorum, iba yun.
Sa kanila pareho yun. Nasabi nila, yun ang sinasabi nila sa amin. Paano naman yan? Paano ba ito? Yung mga colorum na yan kung talagang gagawin, sa totoo lang at sa akin, ang natatanaw ko dito, hindi ang pagtaas ng penalty, Rod, ang tamang dahilan para madisiplina mo ang tsuper at ang operator. Nasa pamamalakad din talaga niya ng inyong ahensya. kung paano nyo pa i-implementa ang inyong gawain na hulihin talaga ang tamang may kasalanan. Taasan mo man ang taasan yan, pero kung hindi susunod ang inyong mga inuutosang nanghuhuli at binibigyan ng panikit, walang mangyayari. Pagkat subok na uulitin ko yung example, from 1,005 na kolorum out of line, ginawan 6,000. Mas lalong dumami ang kolorum ngayon, mas lalong dumami ang out of line ngayon.
Do you agree with that? Mas dumami ang kolorum when you increase the fines?
No. Dumami siya talaga kasi binabaliwala nila yung fines na maliliit before. And in fact, you've heard Ma'am Zenny over and over. Hindi ako dyan sa penalty, okay lang yan para madala. Well, that's it. Para madala ka. Di ba? Simple lang yun. Kung ayaw mo mag-violate.
But do you effectively kill them with that with the penalties? I mean, these are...
I believe we will. I believe we will. Yes,
Hindi,
I believe we
Jason,
will.
Yun nga yung sinasabi ko. Kayo ngayon nanghuhuli, okay, magmumulta. Matatakot. Pag wala na kayo, at itong ginawang jaw na ito, pag wala na ang isang mahusay na Chairman Hines, Cabrera, yung isa pang board, ikaw Jason, na nariyan, kung wala na kayo sa 2016, do you think papakinabangan yan talaga, mangyayari talagang madidisiplina mo ang tsuper at operator? Hindi mo sila madidisiplina. Bakit? Dahil magsisimulang gumawa itong papalit ng mga enforcer na, bakit ko ano yun yan? Basta may pera ko.
I can see the point of Zen, sometimes it is frustrating from our end. We always, when I'm talking with my peers, the usual thing we talk about, it's really the enforcement At saka, I wish they could just enforce it. And dinidisiplina ba yung mga enforcers na yan, di ba? I mean, of course, it's easy for someone in your position to say, yeah, we really discipline them. But for our viewers lang, in more concrete terms, how do you discipline them and what are the numbers? How many do you discipline in a month, for example? Well,
marami na tayo na disiplina, no? But ang sinasabi kasi dyan is that pag alam ng isang tao na ang batas ay ipapatupad talaga at mahihirapan siya, they will follow. For example, why do you think drivers really obey the traffic rules in Subic, for example? Because they know they'll get fined. Diba? So, that's it.
Dahil ginagawa ng mga enforcer doon.
Ginagawa rin dito. Ginagawa rin dito. Kaya lang, since gawin namin, bayaran nila, labas sila buwas. Okay lang naman.
Why the LTFRB naglabas ng memorandum addressed to ASECTAN na tungkol sa franchise to. All franchise expired na may dalang extension ng validity, you should not apprehend. Pero anong ginagawa? Yun yung rinireklamo ko sa'yo.
There's a loophole in that.
Supposedly they have an extension of their franchise. And then they get caught.
Di sila sumunod.
And then hindi in-honor yung extension na yun.
They need to trash that out. Kasi
we say they need to trash that out with whom, with what?
With LTFRB, they need to have a deadline for that because we can just, although we are honoring that, but you need to have deadlines for that. For example, that there's enough time for you to apply for a franchise, diba? So there should be no more extensions. But at any rate, we are honoring that. And if some people are, still disobeying that, we discipline them.
Okay. Now, let me ask Jason. What are your thoughts on? There are some legislators who are saying that this JAO, this Joint Administrative Order, is a reactive response. It's not something that will address, on the long term, the problems of the riding public. More than anyone, the riding public ang nagkakaproblema, di ba? Yeah. The more you implement this, there will be more strikes, di ba? More rallies, rally in the streets.
They can do that. Always, because they tend to lose their franchises if they do that consistently. But at any rate, we do respect the opinions of our lawmakers that in saying that this might be just a reactive clause. But you have to start somewhere. You have to start somewhere. Otherwise, if everybody's gonna think that way na walang mangyayari dyan, reactive lang to, well, talagang walang mangyayari. We have to start somewhere. And as I've mentioned, this is just a part of the whole reform program. So you have to believe that the government is trying to do something to make things right.
I agree with the fact that you increase penalty, normally you get scared, no? And may reaction nga, case in point nga sa Singapore, ganun, talagang the penalties are really, really, really harsh. But nagkaroon ba ng rationalization of these penalties in consultation with their groups? Kasi according to Ma'am Zenny, there was...
lang ginawa nila.
One.
No, that's not true.
That's true.
We made consultation all over.
Ma'am Zenny
In fact,
already-
I've attended the one in Davao, the
Ma'am,
one in Cebu, and the culminating activity
Example
here.
ko sa'yo, ang Region 1 and Region 2,
They did it in Baguio.
Hindi yan pinuntahan. Ang pinuntahan lang nila, CAR. Kaya nagulat ngayon ang grupo ko, ang mga taga-Baguio ko, nandito kaninang umaga, lahat
We're not
sila.
aware.
Hindi sila in-inform, nagulat sila sa JAW. Yun yung sinasabi
Well, that's
ko.
not true. We made public announcement. I made the rounds, TV, radio. I kept saying we're gonna have these consultations. We did it in major cities like Baguio, San Fernando, Pampanga, then down south, Bicol.
Now,
Cebu
when you
and
made these
Davao.
consultations, did you feel that they were fully represented?
Well, we listened.
No, but did you feel that they were fully represented?
Their
Lahat.
members,
Ang
other
aminin ko
members.
sa'yo, maski sa Davao, nandyan ang grupo namin. Lahat sila, nag-oppose sila. Oppose na sinasabi, too much yung mga fines na ginagawa nila. At merong sinasabing mali. Kasi nakikita naman kagad ng driver yun, di ba? Pero anong ginawa? Even ASEC Tan, sinabi niya
Well,
sa
for the
amin,
record, the initial draft was not just among for the fines and penalties, but and for the franchise violations, but specifically for the driver violations, it was higher. It was higher than what was the final output. But because of the
Initially, you had
consultations,
higher. You had higher.
we had higher.
What was it, 2 million for...
No, not really. The franchise violations, yun na yun.
Oh, yun na yun.
But for the
Okay.
driver-related, it was higher for the several violations. But because of the public consultations, the ones we had in the provinces and the last one, the culminating activity here in Quezon City, we listened to them. We adjusted it accordingly.
pinapipirma nyo nga kami, sabi namin, baka itong pirma namin, okay na.
No. We
Nangyari
asked
yun
them,
Nangyari na,
we
di ba?
asked them for their position papers.
One public consultation, tapos nagulat kami, in-announce na ilalabas ng ganitong buwan yung
Ma'am
mga...
Jenny,
it's not
nagbigay ba
one.
kayo ng position paper nyo as mentioned by...
We asked
Merong mga nagbigay. At least ang ibig sabihin, nandiyan kaharapan lahat. Andiyan ang media noon. Andiyan ang karamihan
Yeah,
sa
we
media.
invited media.
Isang consultation lang. Kaya sabi namin, dapat magharap pa. Kailan mo ba itutuloy ito? Dahil kasi nag-o-oppose kami. Ang sabi sa amin, maybe July. July. Ha? Nagulat kami, June. Inutos na kagad. Kaya sabi namin, anong klaseng public consultation to? Kami po, hindi kami nagsasalita because para ma-offend kayo o para maano kayo, hindi. Kundi gusto lang naming malaman na wag naman puro sa amin ang sisi. Kasi ang lumalabas talaga sa JAW, ang nakikita namin, pinipilit nila na pinalalabas nila na ang kinukontra namin sa JAW is the colorum. Lilinawin namin sa publiko na hindi po kami kontra sa ginagawa nilang panghuli ng kolorum. Mas gusto namin. Pero kung talagang nagtatrabaho sila, hindi sila lang, at talaga yung mga may panikit nila talaga magtatrabaho, kakapusin yung inyong mga terminal ng pinaglalagyan nyo ng impounding area. Hindi magkakasayan dahil sa dami ng talagang iaano nyo.
Now, will there, we're talking about
Unti-unti
mga long-term, long-term solution. At least, yun nga, ang purpose natin in having this discussion is hopefully we find a long-term solution now. Everyone is happy, although that's usually difficult. But let's say in the case of lifting of moratorium of franchises or other types of long-term solutions, are you looking into that apart
Well,
from
they're
just
doing
the
that.
penalties?
They're studying that right now, and as we speak, they're accepting provisional authorities or applications for trucks, and they're going to issue provisional authorities so that these trucks can apply their routes. Yeah, things are working,
they're moving
but
naman.
we just need to start somewhere.
Okay, all right. We need to take a short break. Please don't go away. When we come back, the results of our online poll on the issue and the final words of our guests. Please stay tuned. You're watching Opposing Views. Welcome back. This is Opposing Views. I'm Rod Nepomuceno. Our guests for tonight, Jason Salvador, LTO spokesperson, and Zenny Maranan, president of the FEDJIDAP. And we asked tonight, is the DOTC's joint administrative order imposing stricter penalties for various land transportation violations justified? Now, Jason, you've implemented it, right?
Yes.
You've implemented the JAO. In the span of time that you have implemented it, what is your general assessment? Do you think it's been successful, and do you think this will provide an impetus for a long-term solution?
Yes, actually, we believe it's a very successful campaign so far. Since we started,
And you started it in
June 19, yeah. Aside from the fact that we've netted around more than 40 buses since we started, we've seen the impact with Metro Manila traffic. It eased up the
Well,
cloud
not last
lanes.
Wednesday, though.
Well,
Because
when it rained.
When it rains,
so
okay.
that's
Yeah.
not our
But
fault.
generally,
but
you-
we can
you-
see, we can see
you
it's
me-
making a difference.
is this a measurable thing that when you say there's less traffic, you can
Yes,
feel
because
that?
they're not on the roads. We're striking fear in the hearts of this Colorum people, and they're hiding. And that's what we want, to get them out of the streets.
No, is the problem with the Colorum buses the same as the problem with the Colorum jeepneys, for example? Is the
It's
magnitude
not-
the same?
No, it's not that big with jeepneys. But the bigger problem is with buses, and then with...
Yeah, because
with,
they take up more space.
Yeah, and then with trucks, and then some AUVs.
Ma'am, you were saying something. Tingin nyo ba this will bring about, you said earlier, na yung the principle of increasing the penalties in and by itself, wala, parang okay sa inyo. Di ba? So, but do you think this is a start? Ang sinasabi nga ni Jason, this is a start for a long-term solution. Ang tingin nyo ba this is a good start, yung increasing the penalties?
Alam mo kung talagang tutukuyin mo ito, may mga penalties silang tama lamang. Pagkat hindi naman pwedeng kontrahin mo ang lahat, lalo na kung makikita mong ikadidisiplina ito ng isang driver at isang operator. Ang sinasabi lang namin sa JAW, na ginawa na namin ngayon, na ayaw nila kaming pakinggan, nung makita namin ang caravan namin, nakita namin sa TV, na caravan lamang ay marami na apektong mananakaw, hindi yan ang target namin. Ang target ng caravan namin is para ipaalam ano yung hinaing namin muli. Pagkat sa isang public consultation, mukhang hindi naintindihan. So, ginawa namin ang caravan from LTFRB to DOTC. Hindi kami pinansin, no dialogue na nangyari, walang patawag. So, ang ginawa namin, nakita namin, para wag maparusahan ng mga tao na naghahanap buhay, gumawa kami ng isang sulat, Rod, address to the President through Secretary Abaya, asking for a dialogue para maipaliwanag namin sa Pangulo kung ano talaga. Kasi ang iniisip namin, baka hindi naintindihan ng Pangulo, ano ba yung aming kinocomplain? Ano ba yung bakit salita kami ng salita na stop jaw, stop jaw. Ang ginagawa nila ay hindi pinapatigil, pero marami lang silang probisyon na dapat nilang ayusin. Na kung talagang gusto nilang ayusin, bakit ang out of line nagawa ng memo na stop muna for 120 days para ayusin naman namin ang aming mga papeles na may mga problema. Bakit hindi gawin din yung ibang sinasabi namin probisyon na makita pagkat yun, i-disseminate namin sa mga tao namin, sa mga driver, upang dahil sila ang uulihin, sila ang titikitan para malaman nila na itong mga bagay na ito ay wala, hindi gagawin pagkat merong parang tinatawag nating status quo.
Given you have stakeholders who are obviously complaining, are you continuing the dialogue and the
Well,
conversation?
obviously, we're sensitive to their plight and to what they're feeling. As what Ma'am Seni just mentioned, we suspended the implementation for out of line until they fix their route. So, we are sensitive to their plight. We're not just doing this like, wala kaming pakialam sa inyo, ipatutupad namin to. We're adjusting accordingly. So, again, bottom line is just order. If we think that, you know, there are some points that needs to be fine-tuned, we were doing this. But still, we want to impose order and discipline so that, you know, we could all have peaceful lives while driving on the streets.
The sense that I'm getting, Jason, is that they feel that this is all, the burden is all on them, all the penalties are on them, but they don't know, they're not aware of the penalties with regards to your erring
They're not aware.
enforcers.
Hindi nila alam.
Well,
Karamihan sa mga tsuper walang alam.
There's a lot of burden really on the drivers and on the public utility business. But from the beginning, having a driver's license and a franchise is a privilege. So if with this privilege comes lots and lots of responsibilities. So you really have to, you know, you toe the line and obey them. With regards to our own, we also impose a lot of responsibilities on the shoulders of the enforcers. They know what they need to do and they know what will happen to them if they do wrong. So it's both.
Now, whenever you have consultations, ba yung mga enforcers na yan and the drivers, are they there and then they can share each other's, I guess, comments?
Rod,
Ganun ba yung consultation?
bakit hindi gawin natin, hindi namin inuutusan sila, bakit hindi nila gawin yung executive order na ginawa ni Secretary Ping de Jesus na magkaroon ng pagsasanay at pag-aaral ang mga tsuper para madisiplina natin. Kasi wag naman kayong mau-open sa amin, hanggang ngayon nangyayari. Maraming kumukuha ng lisensya na hindi
dapat binigyan. Hindi dapat binigyan.
Well,
nagtetest
we're
doon.
moving towards that.
2,500 nakakakuha na. Hanggang ngayon patuloy yan. Pagkat nandyan talaga, aminin natin ang katotohanan, marami sa loob ng LTO, hindi natin linalahat, pero karamihan, pera pa rin. So, ang isang driver, nagkakaroon ng lisensya, excuse me do sa word, nagiging tanga. Walang alam, kapag maneho, natuto lang ng atrasabante, pinayagan nyo. Tapos ngayon sasabihin nyo, kailangan i-discipline. Kayo may kasalanan eh. Sa umpisa pa lang dapat dinidisiplina nyo na.
That's true.
That's
true. The program is before and after. We're trying to correct that. Admittedly, there were some lapses in the past. That's why we're trying to correct them by disciplining them on the roads. But we're also trying to reform the licensing process. We're trying to change the exams. We're trying to change the practical examinations and everything like that. And we're going to implement a merit and demerit system so as that when you're a recidivist violator,
you always
get into trouble. We will shorten the validity period of your license until it gets to the point that we suspend them and then we eventually revoke them. So for those who are really not gonna shape up, we're gonna revoke it. And for those who are really good drivers, they don't get into any accidents, they don't violate the laws, we'll extend their license. So that's part of the program.
Now, are the penalties as harsh for the enforcers? May enforcers,
they'll lose their jobs.
They lose their jobs.
They'll lose their jobs.
Yeah.
In the same manner that they're gonna lose their livelihood.
May mga fines
yes.
yan. Oh.
Administrative and criminal.
Bakit ang local government pinapayagan yung manghuli ng administrative? Dapat moving violation lang sila. Bakit binibigyan nyo sila ng karapatan na makapagawa ng isang ordinansa na penahan kami ng gusto nilang pena? Bakit sila nakikialam sa franchising regulation?
Example po. Anong mga, let's say, mga LGU na mga na rules?
Ano yun? Di ba lahat gumawa na ng ordinansa ngayon na meron kaming penalty, halimbawa kung out of line ka, 2,005. Samantalang tayo, 6,000, di ba?
Kasi double yung penalty?
Yes.
Well, hindi naman double, but they have their own ordinances, they have their own rules.
Well,
but with the devolution,
right?
because of the local government code, di ba? Na-devolve talaga, may mga powers talaga yung mga LGUs, But ano naman yun kung iba yung rule ng LGU, iba yung rule ng MMDA, iba yung fine nila, iba yung fine ng MMDA, iba yung fine namin, iisa lang naman ang layunin yan. Disciplina at safety on the roads. All
right. Now we've reached. We have a few minutes left. Yes, ma'am. I'm going to ask you to summarize.
Isa lang tama yung layunin mo.
Before the final words. Sige, go ahead.
Siguro pinakamaganda, Drivers Academy para sa tsuper. Implement natin upang maturuan natin sila. Pakiusap. Huwag sobrang taas ng inyong fines and penalties na ginawa. Pag-aralan nyo munang mabuti. Alam namin na maganda ang inyong intensyon, ang inyong layunin, pagkat yan din ang layunin namin, like me as a leader. Gusto ko i-disiplina talaga ang mga tsuper at operator, dahil may mga pagkukulang sila. Pero, ang aming pananaw, pinapatay nyo kami. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Well, unfortunately, we've reached the final portion of our show. And maybe this is the time to do that. No? Jason, your final words to our viewers.
Gusto lang natin ipaunawa sa ating transport industry na itong mga fines and penalties na to ay hindi nilagay dyan upang patayin kayo, upang harangin ang inyong hanap buhay. Nilalagay natin to upang magkaroon ng kaayusan sa lansangan, magkaroon ng order, at ultimately, makapagligtas ng buhay. Kasi kung walang disiplina, walang order, maraming disgrasya, magulo, lahat delikado.
Alright, thank you very much, Jason Salvador of the LTO, of course. Ma'am Jenny, your final words para
sa amin
mga
naman,
viewers.
nauunawaan namin kayo sa inyong gusto para sa amin, pagkat ito'y para sa kabutihan namin, yun ang inyong pananaw. At natutuwa naman kami, pero isa lang, bago nyo ipa-implement ang isang bagay, pag-aralan muna nating maigi, pag-usapan nating maigi, magkaroon ng complete dialogue, nang hindi sa isang usapan lamang ay tapos na. Ibahagi nyo kami, pagkat kami ang tatamaan sa bawat gagawin nyo. Ang mga tsuper ang mahihirapan, ang operator ang mahihirapan, sa bawat ididesisyon nyo na taas ng fines and penalty. Dahil alam namin, hindi nagagamot ito, kundi lumalaki lamang ang graft and corruption.
And yan ang layunin namin dito sa Opposing Views para magkaroon ng discussion. And we started right here. Okay, so it's perfect. You were able to air your side. You were able to air your side for the benefit of our televiewers. Again, thank you very much, Jason, and thank you very much, Ma'am Zenny. Again, our guests, Mr. Jason Salvador, spokesperson of the Land Transportation Office, and Ms. Zenny Maranan, president of the FEDIDAP. Now let's feel the pulse of our viewers through our online poll. Our question, is the DOTC's joint administrative order imposing stricter penalties for various land transportation violations justified? Those who answered yes, they're justified is 40%. Those who answered no, 60%. And that's our Opposing Views for tonight. Tune in again next week for another bold and engaging discussion on today's most relevant issues. I'm Rod Nepomuceno. Good night. God bless.